For this example, suppose you get a job out of college, which we'll say is at 22 years old for the sake of specificity, that offers a 401k that your employer matches up to $3,000 in annual contributions towards. If you contribute this amount and the interest rate is 6.5% compounded annually, we want to find out what the value of the 401k is after 13 years. Then see if you leave the job when you turn 35, but leave funds in your account, how much will be left when you turn 60. And then finally, how much of the value in the account at the time you turn 60 will not have come from your contributions. So to begin with, we have the same sort of setup that we usually do with an annuity. In this case, we have the value for P here is $6,000 because you're putting in $3,000 and the employer is matching. That's the main advantage of a 401k, besides the fact that IRAs tend to have very friendly interest rates for the fact that they are meant to sit for a very long time. Then you have that the interest rate here, R, is 0.065. To be sure, N is equal to 1, but I'm not going to write that here because it compounds annually. And T is equal to 13. So, if you want to find the value after that 13 years, you just plug all these things into the formula. You plug in that P is 6,000, you have the rate 0.065, 13 years, so you raise the whole thing to the power of 13, minus 1 divided by 0.065, and you'll get that the value here is approximately 116,998.85 cents. You never know when you might need 3/4. Where from there, if you leave the job, some places make you close the account, but not all of them do. So we're going to assume here that they don't force you to close the account, and you don't necessarily need to access that money then. It's still meant to be earmarked for retirement, so why not just leave it, let it continue to grow? If you do that, you would essentially just be leaving it in a compounding interest account because no one else is going to contribute to it. So you would have for the value by the time you're 60, I'll write that as A 60 here, just to be sure, is the amount when you're starting, the principal there of 116,998.85 times 1 plus 0.065 raised to the power 25, because 25 years after you're 35 would be when you are 60, which hopefully many of you aren't thinking about yet, because that'd be quite strange. A little early to be that worried. But plug all these things in where they need to go, and you'll end up having that the value when you turn 60 in that account is $564,835 and about 22 cents. Where if you want to know how much of that is interest, that's going to end up being that total there, $564,835.22 minus the $3,000 that you contributed over the 13 years. So $39,000 in total over that time period for a value of $525,835.22 that you had absolutely nothing to do with except holding a job for 13 years. That's a pretty good bonus if you ask me. Now, when you're thinking about retirement, it might not seem like a ton because you're supposed to live on that forever. And for reference, if you did decide to withdraw this when you were 60, at this point in time, it's estimated that you should have 80% in annual income after you retire. That is, 80% of what you're used to making should be what you get from your account every year. So if you made $50,000 at that point, assuming that inflation doesn't completely ruin the value of the dollar to the point that this is a nonsense projection, you would need to have about $40,000 per year. So taking that $564,835.22 and dividing it by $40,000, because, check this to be sure, $40,000 is 80% of $50,000, you would get that just the money from the company you worked at almost half your life ago, you'd have about 14 years worth of income. So it's actually not that bad. But these are the many things we can do with our retirement savings. These are the many things we can do to get more money. Let's finally start looking at ways that we can spend all of that money we have, where we are going to start by talking, about the first big expense of most of your lives, hopefully, assuming some misfortune hasn't struck you in some other way. I'm being so weird. We're talking about cars. We'll get to that next.